Hey guys, welcome to today's video, and today I will be talking about my March roundup and the books I have read in March. And I have managed to read all of my TBR pile for March as well. So yeah, this book will be just me rounding up the books, giving my honest opinion and telling you what I rated them on Goodreads. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and don't forget to leave the notification bells on. And comment down below your favourite books or books you'd like me to read. So yes, let's get straight into the video. The first book which I'll be talking about is a book called Unnatural Causes by Dr. Richard Shepherd, and this is about a pathologist who is quite well known and has performed over 23,000 autopsies. And it talks about the Dr. Richard Shepherd and him developing throughout his career. And it also talks about how having the job which he does do, how it had affected him in many ways throughout his personal life, his relationships, and his like becoming a father and having children. And I found this book really interesting because it was jam-packed with loads of like facts, and it was jam-packed with stuff you wouldn't really know unless you read it, which I found interesting. And at times it did like some of the stories which it mentioned, it honestly pulled my heartstrings, and like I did want to cry for some of the families of the dead people throughout the book. And he talks about how there is some particular things which some pathologists won't do autopsies on, like some pathologists won't do babies or kids. And he talks about how him do it the first time he did a baby, etc. And there was some points throughout this book where he has obviously, changed the names of the people he's done autopsies on, just for their own privacy and the family's privacy. But some of them he has kept their real names just for the pure fact of like a lot of people would have guessed who the autopsy is on anyway. And yes, I ended up rating this 3 stars, and the reason why it's it's not too low, but it is kind of low, is for the pure fact of like I would read some of this book and I would have to take a break from it because of how raw this is and how haunting it is, and how it does go into detail about each of the autopsies and how it's affected him, etc, etc. And sometimes I did need to take a break from this book just for the pure fact of it was so jam-packed and so full of information. It was just like, wow. So yeah, I do recommend this book. Like, it is a really good book, but bear in mind that it has a lot of information and it is very raw, and there is obviously trigger warnings because it does mention about some cases of abuse and rape and obviously child abuse. And just because it's so heart-wrenchingly honest, it's quite upsetting at times. Like, I didn't cry over it, but I did feel warm as if I were to cry at some points. Like, it did genuinely break my heart, but I did enjoy this book. I thought it was quite a good book, and it was very interesting. It's nothing like anything I've read. So yeah, I rated this 3 stars, but I do recommend it, but only if you can cope reading that sort of stuff. But yeah, first book I read was Unnatural Causes by Dr. Richard Shepherd. Now let's move on to the second book. The next book which I read was a book by Jenny Han, and it's The Summer I Turned Pretty. And I've had this book for quite a while, and I've wanted to read this because I've wanted to read To All the Boys I've Loved Before, which is 3 of my favourite films. And I wanted to read the book version, but I was like, oh, what if I don't enjoy her writing? So I was like, oh, I'd read this since I already have it. So I did. And my little sister told me it wasn't very good, so I did. I must admit I did have quite low expectations for this book, but this book is good. I love this book. It's quite a summery read, if that makes sense. It's quite, you know, it does warm you up at some points. And it's about this girl who goes to this like summer house, I think it is, and these 2 families go to this summer house each year. I think it's a summer house, or it's the family friend's house, and they go to it each year in this, I think it's summer holidays, and they have done it each year for so many years, for like as long as they can remember. And she's always had a crush on this boy called Conrad, who's quite a reserved person. Like, he's the typical, like, he sounds like the stereotypical bad boy, even though he's not really a bad boy, but he's that kind of reserved, doesn't really like let people know how he's feeling. And then he has a brother called Jeremiah, who's such a lovely boy. He's so friendly, and he's, from what I gather, he's the kind of boy that just wants to make everyone laugh and wants everyone to be happy. But this summer is a bit like, it talks about her, it's her like going through puberty, you know, and starting getting a womanly body, if that makes sense. Like, she's, you know, her body's changing, if you know what I mean. So the boys start paying attention to her because, you know, she's starting to get a womanly body, and turned pretty, even though she were before, but, you know, and she's starting to meet boys, etc, 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 and it talks about this throughout the book, and boys are starting to pay her attention, and it's just quite beautiful, like watching it develop, watching her friendship develop between these brothers. And I must admit, there's a storyline within this book which I won't say too much about because it will spoil it. And the boy's mum has had cancer before, and it goes into a bit of a detail about that. And it, like, when it did talk about that, it did upset me a little bit, and it did make me like feel sorry for the family, even though it's a book. But yeah, I really loved this book. It's a book you imagine reading like at the beach. Like, it's quite a summery book, and if I'm honest, I do think every girl should read this book. It's just that sort of book which you'd love. Well, I really loved it, and I rated this 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. So yeah, I will definitely be buying the rest of these books, because I have to find out more, and I have to find out what happens. So yeah, The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han is a book I definitely recommend because it's so incredibly brilliant. So yeah, let's move on to the third book that I read in March. The third book I read in March is Since You've Been Gone by Anuska Knight. And I was expecting this book to be average. Like, I was expecting it to be an okay book. I just thought it would just be, just a book that I've read, if that makes sense. But this book I read in a day. And I'd have a look how many pages. This book is 379 pages and I read this in a day. Bear in mind I've never read a single book in a day before. Because I think I just found this so warm and just so beautiful. And it made me feel so warm and cosy inside. Like, I just wanted to read more. I wanted to read more about Holly, the main character, and about her developing as a person and her growing. And it's about a girl called Holly Jefferson, and she runs a cake business, a cupcake business, with her friend called, I can't remember what his friend's called, but it's called Cake. And she's been running it for as long as and I'm trying to find what her friend's called. Jez. And just because what happens is she was married or engaged, and her fiance, her husband, died, and they were childhood sweethearts. And throughout the book, it's just her like finding herself, her becoming her own person, not just a widow. And it's so beautiful watching her grow, just watching her grow. And she ends up meeting this guy called Kieran Argyle, who is his family's rich and his family's well known. And Kieran's well known as this, a bit of a ladies' man. And you just hear about all this in the press about Kieran Argyle, who has slept with this and this woman who's a bit of a bad boy, but when really he's just a lovely person, and he had his heart broken and doesn't want to find love, if that makes sense. Like, he's too scared to ever open his heart up again. And throughout this story you find more about Holly, and you find more about Kieran and why he is the way he is, like what's affected him, a bit about his life. And Holly is adamant that, she doesn't want to find love. She has no reason to. She's already found it and doesn't feel the need to find it again. But obviously she bumps into this Kieran, blah, 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 blah. I won't say anymore because it will spoil it, but it's just so beautiful, and I just kept on turning the page just because I wanted to find out more about Holly and Kieran and Jez. I can't remember if his name's Jez or Jess. But it's just so beautiful. Like, the author has just done such a good book and such a good storyline within this book. And I just loved it. And I definitely want to read more by this author. But yeah, I rated this 5 out of 5 stars, and this honestly blew me away. It's so beautiful, seeing this story develop. So yeah, I really honestly do recommend this book. So now let's move on to the last book. So moving on to the last book, which is a book I finished in the last 10 minutes, is the incredible book 11/22/63 by Stephen King, which took me, I think, 10 days to read. But this book, oh my god, is incredible. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I can't see a fault about this book. It's just amazing, and I loved just everything about it. I loved how there's so many different things that you learn about each character within this book. And what happens is there's this guy called Jake, and he befriends a guy called Al who owns a diner, and Al is dying. He's got quite poorly, and Al tells Jake about this like time machine in his basement, and tells Jake that he needs to go back in time to stop the Kennedy assassination. And he has all this information which he's wrote about who he thinks did it and why he thinks did it, and all the different steps. So yeah, Jake ends up going back in time and changes his name to George, and does as Al tells him. And he ends up getting a job as a teacher as he travels back in time, just to, you know, get a bit of money in his pocket. But he ends up meeting this beautiful lady called Sadie, and they end up falling in love. But because of who George really is, because he's Jake, the relationship is quite difficult. But yeah, I won't say anymore just because it will spoil it. But it was just so incredibly beautiful watching the story develop between Sadie and George, well, Jake. And it was so incredible just watching Jake grow as a person and become this new person who has different views. And this book, honestly, is so addictive. It had me just wanting to read every day, all day. I was reading as much as I could just because I wanted to find out more and more. And it's just like some of it is quite haunting, if that makes sense. But this book just made me feel so many incredible emotions. Like, there were some bits that I just felt so heartbroken for some of the characters. And this is the first book where I've properly cried, like had tears coming down my face. And there was a bit which was really quite sad, and it made me cry. And I was sat there, I was like, how is this not the end? I can't cope with getting more sad about this book. Bearing in mind there was just under 100 pages left, I was like, what else can they talk about? And it was just so beautiful. Like, some of the storyline obviously wasn't, but it's just so incredible. I really honestly do recommend this book. I will recommend it to everyone and anyone, and it's just so incredible. I think I prefer this book over Green Mile. Those are the only two King books I've read, and I only say that because I love the beautiful storyline between Sadie and George. And now there's a machinery thick car thing coming past my house making loads of noise. Let's just wait for that pause. But yes, I do really, really love this book, and I really recommend this book. It's so incredible. Like, yeah, obviously how big it is a bit scary, but I recommend this book. I love it. It's definitely in my top books. So yeah, these are all the books I've read this March. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I've hoped you enjoyed hearing about the books I've read this March. Let me know if you've read any of these books, and let me know your opinions on them. I'd love to have a conversation about it. But I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you continue to have a great day. And spend time in the sun. It's a sunny day where I am. And don't forget to wear sun cream if it's sunny. You don't want to burn. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you continue to have a good day. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and don't forget to leave the notification bells turned on. Have a good day. Bye.